person will. Terror explodes in horror and heartquake.
We are talking about the movie The Legend of Halloween Jack. This one directed and written by Andrew Jones. Now, if you've watched my channel for any time, you may have heard me mention the name Andrew Jones before and his production company, Northback Entertainment. But in case you haven't, he is essentially the English equivalent of the Asylum from the US. A low-budget film production company that quite often does mockbusters, or they'll try to do things that are in the public domain, you know, like Living Dead, things like that, kind of like spin-offs of that. And to be honest with you, his films are extremely cheap, they're extremely quickly made, and actually, on the most part, make the Asylum films look pretty good by comparison. So I was a little bit hesitant with The Legend of Halloween Jack because the track record has not been good so far. And I will say this film is actually probably the best movie that I've seen by Andrew Jones, but still comparatively has a lot of problems. But let's give you an idea of the plot here. It focuses on a team of police detectives as they have finally caught who they assume is this kind of like very infamous serial killer, but he's let off on a technicality. So the police take their matters into their own hands and ultimately execute this guy because they are convinced, obviously, he's going to kill again. Now, for some reason, they can dress him up as a scarecrow. There's no real reason for it, but it just kind of looks cool, so whatever. Anyway, they kill him and kind of bury him. And then a year later, through reasons, he's kind of resurrected as a kind of a killer scarecrow-looking character and wants revenge on his wrongdoers. So we learn that he may have been innocent, potentially may have been innocent all along. Anyway, so he goes after the kind of obviously the people who wronged him and anyone else who just seems to get in the way. This movie reminds me a lot of the Dark Knight the Scarecrow, which is a classic kind of scarecrow themed horror movie. I feel maybe this may have been the inspiration for this film. So what works with this movie? So this movie, I would say, if you look at positives first of all, the movie's fairly well paced. Sometimes I feel with Andrew Jones's movies, he doesn't have a lot of money, so there just seems to be a lot of long scenes that are just time fillers, basically, because there's no real, you know, there's no plot really in a lot of the films. This one, I would say, is fairly well paced because you have a kind of a, you know, quite a large cast here, more than kind of normal with these films, and therefore, because you've got ultimately this is a slasher film, it's not particularly effects heavy. You know, the movie goes at a fair pace. It's not a long film, but it goes at a fair pace. It's not it's not a ball. You're not sat there bored waiting for anything happens. The acting as well is marginally better than some of these other films I've seen. It kind of Lee Bain is the guy who actually is a producer on this, but he's normally the star of Andrew Jones movies, and he is in this in a small role, and he's really just in the kind of the background of this film. So it's nice to see some fresh faces, and I think the acting is a little bit better from some of the cast at least, and kind of it's kind of in level with a kind of a DVD movie, straight to DVD movie, if that makes sense. The actual killer, the creature, despite the fact there's no real reason for him to be dressed like there is, actually looks kind of quite cool in like a kind of almost like a smiley faced scarecrow. And there is actually quite a high body count in this movie. So that is the positives out of the way. So let's move on to the negatives. Some technical stuff first of all. There is some really poor audio mixing in this movie. There's a scene that involves a kind of a disco at Halloween. And there's a scene where these two girls are talking and there's this music band playing in the background of this band. You cannot hear a word of dialogue between those two because the audio mixing is terrible, and you just don't know what they're saying, and it's a fairly long scene as well. there are, even though I said there are some good acting, it ain't great. And there's this one guy who's, for some reason, is putting on an American accent. And this is something I've noticed in some of the films by Andrew Jones. I'm assuming it's to try and appeal to an American audience for foreign sales. But for the most part, it's a fairly poor attempt at an American accent. And it just strikes you as odd. Why is there just a random American in the police force? But you know, that's the real reason, is that it's just trying to appeal to, you know, an American distributor ultimately. When we do see our kills, they are fairly uninspired. It's just a kind of, you know, a punch through the chest, and then, you know, something's ripped out through the hole in the t-shirt, stuff like that. So low budget kind of stuff. You know, it's whatever. I don't really mind too much about low budget effects, to be quite honest. There's just a few kind of plot holes in this one. There's also some terrible kind of audio effects. The gunshots, for example, sound really kind of wimpy and tinny. My main problem with North Bank Entertainment is they just seem to rush stuff. And they just seem to bang stuff out really quickly. I mean, they're very prolific. They put out a lot of movies a year. So it's clear that a lot of these films are they're just filmed in a few days. And as such, this stuff seems like very just rushed. I mean, these police detectives seem completely unprofessional. There's just scenes that just seem out of place. So there's just like one of them looks like he's a kind of a domestic abuser, but it's just nothing's done with it. I must say, his wife was a great actress though. The best actress in the movie was this guy's wife, who was this timid sort of woman, you know, a victim of domestic abuse. And I really felt for her. And even though she's only in really one scene, but she was the best actress, I thought, because she just felt like a really scared woman who was kind of like, just kind of having, you know, polite platitudes to kind of appease her kind of abusive husband. And I was a little bit upset that she got killed, I have to say, spoiler. Because I just thought she was the best character in the whole movie, but she's in one scene. But anyway, so yeah, it's to be fair, this is not a terrible film. I think there's enough here to make sort of slasher fans maybe want to check it out if they're into a kind of a lower budget movie. It feels there's just a little bit more put into this movie than kind of a lot of the North Bank movies. They just seem to be banged out with no thought whatsoever. Although this is by no means a good film, and I can't really give it a great rating, I hope this is an indication that there may be a little bit more kind of thought put towards in it, a little bit more kind of backstory, and a little bit more characterization in their characters. Because that's the other thing, I guess, is this movie you do feel like you get to know the characters a little bit, which is a lot lacking from a lot of his other films. But they do seem a little bit more fleshed out. So I would say if you like low budget slasher films, this is actually a passable movie. So I'll give it a 4 out of 10, which might seem low, but I mean, I always say 5 is my average, so this is slightly below average. It's still not, like I said, it's not a great film. There's a lot to kind of like have issues with here, but a lot of the technical stuff, to be able to sort it out, I may have given it a 5. But there you go. Have you seen it? What do you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.